let my old flame spend the night in our bed. Now he's telling everyone I'm a bad person. Hello, Reddits. My name is Sarah, and I've been married for 2 years now. Sam and I dated for a year before we got married, but now my marriage is at the verge of ruins, and it's about to tip over completely, and I honestly don't want that to happen. I love Sam so much, and I regret everything I did to ruin things between us. I did something really terrible, and now Sam won't forgive me for it or stop telling everyone what I did. I allowed my old flame to spend the night in our bed, and Sam caught us, and since that day, which is about a week ago, I've not known any peace. I've been stabbed too much by guilt and by people shaming me everywhere I go because Sam wouldn't stop telling anyone who asks what happened. I want it all to stop, and I want to go back to being Sam's lover and wife. Everything that happened that night was a clear mistake. Joe wasn't supposed to show up that evening. We didn't even have any plans for that day, and he showed up in my house being so drunk and refusing to leave, and I really didn't want him to cause a scene outside the house, especially with our nosy neighbors around, so I allowed him in. Luckily, Sam wasn't home, and I didn't expect him back until the next evening. Please don't judge me yet. Let me explain myself properly. The thing is, before Sam and I met, I used to have this thing. I wouldn't even call it a relationship between Joe and I. We weren't exactly friends, so I cannot even call us friends with benefits, and we weren't passionate lovers either, who were crazy for each other. I knew Joe in college through my friend who was dating him back then. She was madly in love with Joe, and everyone knew that. She was just so obsessed with him and was always discussing him and their future in every sentence she made. But despite how crazy she was for Joe, she never slept with him for some weird reason. Although she spent most of her time with him, she never allowed Joe to get down and dirty with her. She was a virgin and was planning to remain so until marriage apparently, and she kept hoping that Joe would do the honors of marrying her. But it was clear Joe only wanted one thing from her, and that was having sex with her, but she was too blind to see that. Joe and I started having sex while he was still with her. It was supposed to be a one-time thing because I had a relationship with my boyfriend, whom we dated right from high school into college, but it was a long-distance relationship at the time, and we only got to see each other when we went home for the holidays. Joe was meant to be a distraction. I wasn't exactly trying to steal him from her. The first time it happened had been a real mistake. My friend had traveled home because there was some sort of emergency back home, and we stayed together. So having the room to myself, I slept on her very warm and soft bed with a thick duvet. Apparently, her boyfriend had her spare key to the room, so he let himself in at midnight and got drunk too. He probably thought it was his girlfriend sleeping in her bed, and with every intent of breaking her vow, he matched towards me and started to kiss me roughly. I know I could have pushed him away and helped him confirm that I wasn't his girlfriend, but I was enjoying the way he was touching me way too much. Chris, my boyfriend back then, never touched me that way. He was always too scared to do too much whenever we had sex. And since we only met at home, we only had very few opportunities to do it, so we barely had time to explore each other's bodies. But Joe was there touching me in ways I have only ever dreamed of being touched, and he was whispering sweet nonsense into my ears. I allowed him to kiss me and touch me the way he wanted, and when he finally got rid of our clothes, I let him have his way. Even though it was his girlfriend's name he kept muttering, I didn't mind it. I just let him do whatever he wanted. It was the next morning we both had a horrifying discovery of what had happened. Joe begged me not to tell my friend, and I accepted thinking that it was just a one-time thing, but apparently Joe thought of the sex we had that night as often as I did, because we started sneaking around behind my friend's back to do it every time. We did this for about 6 months before my friend caught us in Joe's bed and broke up with him and ended things with me too. She didn't stop there. She managed to get Chris's number somehow off my phone, and she told him the truth, therefore instigating my own breakup with Chris. I was angry, and as revenge, I continued sleeping with Joe even though I knew he was seeing people on the side, and I was too. We were never anything serious. The only good thing we had going between us was good sex. Apart from that, our differences were so large, they could fill up a room, and we argued a lot when we had to be together in the same room. The only place we agreed at all was on bed, and after that, nothing. After we graduated college, everyone went their separate ways, including Joe and I. I moved far away from home and also from the college area, while Joe settled close to school. I knew it was because he wanted to still keep messing with girls, but I wasn't fazed by it. I couldn't move back home because I knew Chris was there, and we ended things on bad notes. So I moved far away, and it was then I met Sam. Sam was one of the supervisors who came from the headquarters of the company I worked for to check things on our side, and when I saw him, to be honest, I fell in love with him, and I made sure he noticed me, and luckily for me, he did notice me. He waited until after the close of work to get my number, and then he drove me home that day. I was pretty excited and waited for his text all night after he left. But Sam didn't text me that being or through the night. He texted me that morning and just simply asked me to save his number and promised to text me after the close of work. When Sam wouldn't text me that evening, I texted him first and he replied instantly apologizing for not texting me first and making excuses for work. I forgave him and we just started talking. Sam was so easy to talk to. He was nice, funny, and cute. He wasn't exactly handsome, not as Joe or Chris was, but he was pretty nice looking with his neat appearance and he was quite bright too. Being that young and already working with the main bosses, Sam and I kept our conversation going for a month after that day, and we started dating not long after. Then, eventually, we got married. Sam lived far away because of his work in the headquarters, so when we got married, I decided to quit my job and go stay with him so we could be together all the time. Although Sam wasn't in support of my decision, he allowed me to do what I wanted, and I did. I moved in with Sam, and we stayed happily married for about a year until things weren't just the same anymore. Not because Sam changed or that he stopped doing everything he did from the beginning. He didn't stop loving me or stop showing me love and affection. Maybe because I was home all day doing nothing, I was starting to get bored by it. I didn't like being home, but I was the one who made the decision, and I didn't want to back out so that Sam wouldn't think less of me. But then that day, everything just simply changed. Sam had traveled to go for another supervising work again, and I was home alone for 2 days. He was supposed to be back the third day, and I wanted to welcome him back in a grand way. Well, being horny was also another reason. So I went to the store to pick up some groceries, and then I met someone there shockingly. It was Chris, my ex-boyfriend, and he was there with his very pregnant wife. Things were awkward between us, particularly when he introduced me to his wife as his old friend, and then collected my number so the wife didn't suspect any reason why we stopped talking beyond what he had told her that we lost contact with. I wasn't even expecting to see his text the next day. He texted me and just kept talking randomly, asking questions about my job and my home. I knew things were still awkward between us, particularly after we broke up. So I swallowed my pride and apologized, and he accepted the apology. I asked about his wife and how they met and what he was doing there when I thought he was still back in our hometown, and he told me everything. He apparently met her after we broke up, and they've been together ever since. It was obvious from the way he told me everything that he loved her even more than he had loved me, and I felt really jealous. I knew I messed up everything between us by cheating, and for some weird reason, I started imagining if I had married Chris instead of Sam. The more we spoke, the more I wished for things that couldn't be anymore, and it seemed like Chris felt that way too, because our conversations started to brood into our sexual life. He told me he didn't enjoy sex with his pregnant wife, not because she wasn't good before, but ever since she got pregnant, her appetite for sex apparently reduced. I told him about Sam, who was always mostly never around because of work. After a month of talking, we started to have phone sex. Just talk dirty to each other and please each other on the phone, but eventually, even that wasn't enough. So Chris and I planned to meet in a hotel. We had sex after many years, and it was totally different from the other times we've had. Chris was no longer that guy that fidget or panicked that we would get caught when we snuck into his room or mine to have sex. He was definitely a grown man because of how well he handled me. I knew that even though it was totally wrong and all, but I just don't know how to explain the feeling of satisfaction I got from sleeping with Chris. It was almost like I could do something his wife couldn't, and I felt empowered by it instead of feeling guilty of cheating a fellow woman of her own spouse. I felt the opposite. So it made sleeping around with Chris even easier than I expected it to be. We were sneaking around to have sex whenever we got the chance to. We went to cheap hotels and faraway ones so we didn't get caught. Anytime Sam wasn't home and I was horny, Sam was only a call away, and we would go separately to a hotel and then meet up in the room, do what we needed to, and then leave. It went on for several months until we got caught. We got caught by a totally unexpected person, and I felt fear for the first time since I started doing what I was doing with Chris. That day, Chris and I had gone to a hotel as usual to have sex, but that day, instead of leaving separately, I was feeling rather too bold, and I decided to step out with Chris from the hotel. But then we walked right into someone, and that person turned out to be Joe. He was there in the hotel with a woman who clung to his hand, especially after realizing that Joe knew me. Chris had no clue who Joe was. He never knew him because he only found out I was cheating from my friend back in college. He didn't exactly see Joe face to face or confront him, so he had no idea who Joe was. I started to panic right there. Joe knew I was married. He would probably have seen my pictures with Sam, especially from our mutual friends who attended my wedding, and I was sure he knew that Chris wasn't the man I married. The thing is, although Chris never knew Joe, Joe knew Chris, and that was because Chris's picture was my phone's wallpaper on my phone back then. He had put it there because of insecurity, and Joe would always laugh whenever he saw the picture. And from the look on his face while looking between both of us, it was obvious that my guess was right. He knew that Chris was my ex and not my husband, and there he was in a hotel with me. Joe said nothing, though. He only grinned and asked for my number with a last remark that we had so much catching up to do. I reluctantly gave him. I couldn't deny him that, and when we finally left the hotel, and Chris had asked who it was, I told him it was a former classmate of mine, and that he knows my husband. But after telling Chris, I regretted it because Chris started to panic even more than me, even though I assured him that I would take care of it. I was so angry when he wouldn't stop asking me how I was going to do that, and I just asked him to drop me off somewhere far away and take a cab instead. I couldn't bear the way he kept shaking like a coward. I felt disgusted by the fact that he could sleep with me but couldn't bear the consequences. When I got home, I waited anxiously for Joe's text, but didn't get one until the next day. He asked me to meet up with him, and I agreed. I had every intention of lying to him about how Chris and I had accidentally bumped into each other at the hotel where I went to because I needed a break from the house. When Joe and I finally met that day after his text for lunch in a restaurant a bit further from my house, and I told him my made-up story, it was clear he didn't believe me, and I finally came out with the truth. Joe told me he had no intention of exposing me, but he had every intention of exploiting the truth he knew. He asked me for a huge amount of money and told me he needed it for some project. I didn't have that amount of money because I didn't even have any savings, and I knew that asking Sam for that sort of money when I didn't even work or do business would arouse his suspicion, so I begged for time from Joe, and I told Chris about it. Chris didn't have up to that amount, and he was only able to give me half of the money. When I gave it to Joe and begged him to accept the money like that, he offered for me to do something else to settle the rest of the debt. He wanted me to sleep with him too, and having no choice, I agreed to it. So I slept with Joe a week after he found out about Chris and I, although I never told Chris about it. I just told him that Joe accepted the money, and that was all. And Chris started to avoid me since that day too, making all sorts of excuses whenever I asked us to meet up. I was pissed at his cowardly behavior, and I just ended up blocking him off. The sex thing with Joe was supposed to be a one-time thing. He told me it was just once, and that was enough, but clearly not because after that day, Joe started to disturb me for sex more often than was necessary. Whenever I refused, he would threaten to go to my husband with the information he had, and I would rush to his home or the hotel or wherever he wanted me to come to. I didn't even enjoy it now. It wasn't something I was doing for fun anymore. I didn't have the power like I did with Chris, because Joe was the one controlling and determining everything that went on between us, so it was really frustrating. Whenever I begged him to stop, he would ask for the balance of the money he was supposed to get, and even increase the amount slightly, knowing I didn't have a choice but to do his bidding. I had too much pride to go back to Chris to ask him for the remaining money, even though we both created the mess. So I endured it by continuing to give into Joe's demands. Between ensuring I was always available whenever Joe needed me and playing the happy wife to Sam, everything was so exhausting and I couldn't just cope with it anymore. So I confided in a friend who in turn referred me to a loan shark, and I borrowed the money from them, hoping to pay back some way or the other before the loan was due. I gave all of the money to Joe, and he left me alone for about 3 months. I was happy that I had finally gotten rid of him, and I was finally able to settle down with Sam again. I was able to finally get off the birth control pill that I was using while I was with Chris and Joe. I was using it behind Sam's back, and he thought it was the natural factors not adding up that wasn't getting us pregnant, but I knew the truth and still kept leading him on like that. But something happened, something that changed everything and my life forever, and it wasn't something good. That particular day, Sam had to go for work as usual, but this time he promised that he was going to be back earlier than he was usually gone for. The next day was our anniversary, and Sam had promised we'd celebrate by going out for dinner when he got back, and I was looking forward to it. I knew Sam wanted to give me a gift. He did on a regular basis, so I was assured I was going to receive something priceless from him. I got him something too, a new wristwatch. The old one broke the last time he had to travel via public transport, so I got him another one as a replacement for the old one, since he hadn't replaced it yet. I was excited for the next day to come, and I had shopped earlier that day for my dress. Sam already told me he would be back in time for the dinner. I didn't know when exactly, but I assumed it was in the evening, perhaps around 6 or 7 before the dinner that was booked for 8. But that evening, something happened. It was almost midnight when I kept getting a consistent knock on the door. I was frightened, and I woke up and had almost called the police when I looked through the little hole in the door and realized who it was. Joe was standing right outside my door, swaying slightly from the obvious effects of alcohol. I quickly opened the door and asked him what he was doing in my house and how he even knew my house. Joe just laughed and told me not even ask to let him in. He told me he knew that my husband wasn't home and that I should let him, or else he was going to tell everyone the type of relationship we had between us. I let him in, but I was so pissed. When I asked him what he was doing at my place, he started complaining to me. He apparently lost the money I gave him. He had lost the first money that Chris gave him at first too, and that was why he kept pestering me for another money until I got it, and he ended up losing at gambling again. I was so pissed because I knew what it took to get that money, but then I pitied him. I couldn't exactly send him out and allow him to expose me to everyone, so I made him promise that he was only going to sleep over and then leave immediately the next morning, and he agreed to my condition. Joe insisted on sleeping in my bed, and when I kept resisting and he kept insisting, I finally gave in and allowed him, hoping it was just for the night. I let him sleep in the bed I shared with Sam, and I slept off beside him too. I didn't know how, but somehow through the night, Joe must have shifted in his sleep, and his hands and legs were on me, and probably because I was used to Sam doing that most of the time, I subconsciously didn't reject the heavy posture on me. But I opened my eyes to a long bang, and when I looked up, I saw Sam staring at Joe and I in shock. I was so shocked, and I quickly moved away from the bed, pushing Joe off. Joe woke up with a grunt and swore at me for pushing him aggressively, and on the floor too. I couldn't utter a word as I kept looking at Sam, who was so angry his jaw was ticking. I tried to explain the situation, but my brain and mouth were working in opposite directions and wouldn't come out with a single thing. Joe got up still hungover, and when he saw Sam, his eyes widened and then had the guts to look guilty when he was the one who barged into my home last night. He tried to go around Sam, but Sam grabbed him by his shirt and was probably about to punch him when Joe shouted that he wasn't the one sleeping with me. Sam was taller and much broader than Joe, so I could understand why he felt intimidated, but then he just had to talk. When he saw that Sam relaxed his tight fist, he continued rambling, telling Sam how he met Chris and I in a hotel and how he took that opportunity to exploit us both. He said everything about the money and about Chris, but said nothing about him sleeping with me. I was so angry and asked him if he didn't also sleep with me, forgetting that Sam was still there. Joe said nothing and kept looking at Sam's fist, but Sam didn't punch him. He released his shirt surprisingly and asked him to leave. He said nothing to me and just went to sit in the living room. I tried to beg him and explain, but Sam just stood up and left the house. And then before noon, my mom was calling me to ask me if everything Sam had told them was true. I couldn't speak or answer her questions. My dad collected the phone and asked me the same thing, but I still couldn't answer him. My older brother called me next, and after that I stopped picking people's calls. Throughout that day, I kept getting calls from everyone. My friends were calling, and people that haven't called in years, or some who didn't ever have any needs to call me. Sam didn't come home for 3 days, and when he eventually did, he brought with him divorce papers. He told me that he wanted me out of the house before the end of the day. I tried to beg him, but Sam wasn't listening to me, and then he left the house again. I eventually had to move out of the house, but I've been trying to get him to talk to him for a week now, and he still wouldn't talk to me. I really need help, guys. I cannot lose Sam, please. Update. Hello, Reddits. It's been a while since I first posted here seeking for some help as regards my marriage. I'm sure that you guys would be thrilled to find out that I still am stuck where I am, and in fact, even more deeper than I ever was before. My life is nothing to write home about. Not that home right now is willing to receive anything from me, not even a letter. My parents are still so upset and are still standing their ground. My mother, who couldn't go a day without checking on me, has now gone days without a single call or a text. My siblings are also ghosting me, refusing to talk to me or have anything to do with me. This is my last post here, and I know how happy you guys are to get rid of me. Your comments on my previous posts weren't exactly happy ones, and I'm sure this post too will receive the same level of hatred and criticism, but I do not have a choice. At least you guys here read my post and then drop off your not so very nice comments. That at least is a level of acknowledgement. My reality is a different one entirely. It's so silent and dark and empty, almost hollow. Having to have myself for company all day long and nights too is agony. You don't know how badly I wish I wasn't the one going through all of this mess, and I just get to sit with my phone and also comment on what a messed up life it is. It's so hard silencing the voices in my head, yelling numerous times a day how much I messed up. My so-called social life is worse. No one wants anything to do with me anymore. Somehow the news had spread not just from our friends and family, but also to everyone both in the neighborhood and outside it. Everyone now looks at me as if they know exactly what it is I am. To them, I'm a slut who is not satisfied with her perfect husband. To them, I'm a sex maniac who did everything right to ruin her marriage. To them, I'm nothing but a disgusting person who shouldn't even exist anymore. To them, I'm nothing. And I'm sure that applies to you guys too, if your biased comments are anything to go by. The way each of you have scripted each insult like it was some competition that would get you an award. The way you guys have made me realize just how audacious and shameless I am to come online on this platform to think I could receive some sort of advice after hurting Sam the way I did. The way you've insulted me clearly and made me even more depressed than I already am. It's quite painful, very painful in fact, I wouldn't lie, because I came here thinking that this was my last hope. Maybe somehow someone somewhere would relate with me, would understand my emotions when I made those decisions, however stupid they were, that someone would see my desperation to get a second chance with Sam, and perhaps give me something, anything at all to help with my situation with Sam. But I got the direct opposite. I got insults instead of advice. I got pain instead of the comfort I sought after. I got shame instead of liberation. I got the opposite of everything I came here seeking for. Maybe I shouldn't have. I should never have come here. What was I thinking? Even to me, I realize just how horrible I sound as a person using a flimsy excuse such as sex to have an affair. I should have known that I would never get anything but the things I got. I should have expected it. In fact, I did expect it, but not this much. I didn't expect every one of you to turn your back on me just like everyone else in my life already has. I didn't expect that every single person would hate me and hate my gut for coming here to ask for a second chance. I don't blame you guys. I only have myself to blame. Now that I've lost the chance of being in Sam's life, I realize just how much I miss the little things I took for granted. All the dates we go on, each one managing to be more special and more unique than the last. All the gifts he bought me, each one more beautiful and more expensive than the last. All the little moments he never missed to spend time with me. All the decisions he made with every consideration of me. I wanted nothing with Sam, and yet I was so selfish and greedy. Now that I have to pay rent and bills for almost everything like water and electricity, I realized just how much I had taken for granted things I had on a platter of gold. I never had to worry about things like that before with Sam. He took care of things like that, and now I know just how little I appreciated having a man like him in my life. And I traded that joy, that opportunity for something as silly as an affair with an incapable man, and not just one, but two. Both of them are less and less than Sam. Both of them ran at the slightest sight of trouble. I knew that. I knew that Chris was never someone who would stick to me, and that Joe was never that person who wanted anything from me aside from pleasure. I knew that they were nothing like Sam, but yet I was stupid enough to still continue until I had finally ended up destroying myself and my marriage. Words really cannot encompass how much I regret everything I've ever done to Sam. I remember so vividly that morning when I knelt and cried and begged Sam for forgiveness, and he looked at me with cold eyes. I did that. I did that to him, and I will always regret turning the back of the man who loved me with my faults against me. Those eyes as they stared at me with plenty of emotions, anger, bitterness, hatred, but none of them, love, has now become my nightmare. Every night I go to sleep wishing the same thing. And that I wake up and find out I was only having a terrible dream, and I was right back where I always was, like I never left in Sam's arms. But then I wake up every day gasping for air, dreaming about that horrible day when I had ruined my life with my own hands. I regret everything so badly, and I wish I could turn back the hands of time, but I know that I cannot do so. I will forever be stuck here trying to remedy what cannot be. I will be here in this bottomless pit of self-imposed hell, suffering for every sin I committed against Sam. It's hellish knowing that Sam will move on, or maybe he already has, and with someone else, someone who would love him and appreciate him, someone who would cherish him so much and try everything in them to please him, someone who is definitely not going to cheat on him, someone who isn't me. I imagine it to be one of those girls who keep surrounding themselves around him, despite knowing he was married then. He had his pick of women and can easily choose anyone to replace me, and I feel so terrible knowing I did that to myself. Made myself replaceable instead of otherwise. I regret ever meeting Chris again or ever thinking an affair with him was the right decision to make. I regret ever sacrificing everything I have with Sam for a fleeting affair, and especially with someone like Chris, and then proceeding to have another with Joe. The same person who hadn't even bothered to look for me or call me to check on me and see how I'm coping with the consequences of our actions. The same coward who fled the scene of our crimes, leaving me alone to face Sam looking at me with disgust, clearly written on his face. I never should have. I really never should have, and I regret it so much. I wish I could just turn back the hands of time and undo everything. I wish I could undo every part about meeting Chris and Joe and hold on to every part with Sam in it. Sam never deserved what I did to him. He was kind and gentle, the kind of man any woman would be lucky to have, but I had thrown that away, and I just wish that I could undo this horror that is now my life. It's hurtful knowing I can never go back. I could never make amends, and even if I did, no matter how hard I tried, Sam will never see me the same way again. He will never forgive me or look at me with love in his eyes. There's the agony of remembering his eyes alone, just after a day of finding out about the horrible things I did. Talk less of a lifetime of viewing me with that same lens, or even something deeper, something with deeper resentment and hatred for me. I know that I will spend my lifetime serving this jail time of no Sam, and it's just horrible that 1 month is like this already. I wonder fearfully just how months or even years of staying like this would do to me. I'm scared for life. I'm scarred by my own mistakes and branded by my regrets, and it's hurtful knowing that this might continue to be my life. This feeling of loneliness is the worst. Having no one to talk to or no one to care about you is just terrible. I have no friends, my family are still ignoring me and refusing to have anything to do with me. I sincerely wish I had done better, that I have not been as stupid as I was and made all the decisions I made. Now I'm stuck with the what-ifs and whys that don't have answers. I wish I could desperately just turn back the hands of time right from the beginning, when I had run into Chris at that store and allowed him to get my number, or when the conversation easily shifted from normal discussion into something entirely different, and I had allowed him. I wish I could turn back the hand of time to that day we had seen Joe at the hotel, so I didn't have to let him blackmail me into owing him money, and also sleeping with him and now being left with too much debts than I know how to handle. I wish I had the privilege to just undo everything I did, but that is never going to happen, is it? Because life doesn't do do-overs, so I'm stuck, in this time, with no end. Just a repetition of everything I've done wrong, which is literally everything. It's sad how I've ended my own life. Sam will never forgive me, and neither will everyone. I've been ousted by the person I love the most in the world, and it is totally my fault. I probably should have never started what I couldn't finish. Now all I can do is just spend my life on this uncertain journey of the rest of my life that only promises two things: pain and torment. Thanks and goodbye, guys.